If you're looking for ways to activate stem cells to regain vitality after age 60, you'll immediately be bombarded by hundreds of ads for flashy overseas clinics, miraculous supplement bottles, or infusion therapies costing tens of thousands of dollars. What if I told you that most of these are pseudoscience designed to profit from our desire to be healthy? But here's the most interesting truth. Just because those expensive things don't work doesn't mean you can't do anything. Drawing from rigorously peer-reviewed studies in top medical journals like Nature Cell or the New England Journal of Medicine, modern medicine has found extremely accessible interventions, most of which are completely free, that can significantly restore stem cell function. There's a deeply ingrained myth in our minds that the body ages because stem cells gradually die off and we run out of the raw materials to repair damage. Forget that, because the real picture is far more groundbreaking. The truth is, at age 65, the number of stem cells in your body is still nearly the same as when you were 25. The core issue isn't that they've disappeared, but that they have shut down. It's like skilled workers trapped in a factory filled with waste and toxic fumes. Your stem cells are stuck in a toxic aging environment. Therefore, instead of wasting money injecting new stem cells into an already polluted environment, the real smarter and much more effective medical goal is to clean up that living space to awaken your existing stem cells and put them back to work. I'm Dr. Crisanto. The work I spend most of my week on is immersing myself in original clinical studies, breaking down complex data and translating it into practical information to help you make the most accurate health decisions for yourself. What I'm sharing today is purely science-based with no embellishment. However, before we dive into the protocol for cleaning the stem cell environment, I need to emphasize one principle. This is medical education, not a substitute for advice from your personal physician. If you have underlying health conditions or are on prescription medications, especially for blood pressure, cardiovascular issues, or diabetes, please consult your doctor before implementing any lifestyle changes, because there are real interactions we cannot overlook, and that's something you need to know. And here is what we will discuss today. I will guide you to understand what really happens to your stem cells after age 65 based on 5 biological mechanisms that have been precisely proven through research. Then I will show you studies that reveal how these mechanisms can be significantly influenced by what you do every day. And finally, I will provide you with a practical 5-pillar process organized by the level of evidence, so that after watching this video, you will have the exact knowledge to get started easily. Before we begin, let us know in the comments your age and where you're watching from. We read all the comments, so please leave yours below. To understand how to regain vitality after 60, we must first shed a very common misconception. You've probably heard that the aging process is simply your body's cells getting old, dying off, and your body running out of materials to repair itself. It sounds logical, but from a clinical medicine standpoint, that picture is completely wrong. The more accurate and more hopeful truth is this: at age 65, you still possess nearly the same amount of stem cells as you did when you were 25. The problem isn't that they've died or disappeared. The problem is that they have stopped working. And the reason they've gone on strike is that the environment around them has become too toxic. Think about the everyday signs you or those around you are experiencing. When a muscle fiber tears during a workout, the stem cells in that muscle, called satellite cells, are supposed to wake up, divide, and repair the damage. When your blood cells wear out, hematopoietic stem cells in your bone marrow produce replacements. When the lining of your gut needs to be renewed, intestinal stem cells take care of it. This process happens continuously, quietly, throughout your life. And between the ages of about 60 and 75, this process slows down in ways that lead to cascading consequences. Wounds that used to take a few days to heal now drag on for weeks. A respiratory infection that would have put you in bed for 2 days at age 40 now takes 10 days to get over. You lose muscle mass even though your habits haven't changed. Bone density decreases, and the immune response to vaccines weakens. These are not random strokes of bad luck. They are largely the consequences of stem cell dysfunction. To get to the root of this problem, research over the last 5 years has pinpointed exactly 5 biological mechanisms that weaken stem cells. When you understand how they operate, you'll see that restoring their function is entirely within your grasp, not as vague as baseless advertisements suggest, and the protocol I'm about to present will be much easier to understand. The first mechanism, and the one attracting the most attention in the medical community right now, involves the accumulation of senescent cells. Imagine your stem cells are young, healthy workers ready to work in a factory. But ironically, the factory floor is crammed with retired workers. According to biological rules, these damaged cells should die off, but they don't. they turn into zombie cells. They don't divide, they don't die, they just stand there screaming constantly, secreting a cocktail of toxic inflammatory signals called SASP, the senescence-associated secretory phenotype. This cascade of chemicals directly poisons the local environment, paralyzing the young stem cell workers and making it impossible for them to do their job. This is not just a theory. A landmark study published in the journal Nature Medicine in 2016 experimentally proved that when a targeted method was used to destroy these zombie cells, the function of hematopoietic and muscle stem cells in aging bodies was immediately rejuvenated and robustly restored. This progress didn't stop with animal models. By 2019, the first human clinical trial led by Dr. LaTanya Hickson and her colleagues at the Mayo Clinic and published in eBiomedicine, part of the Lancet system, confirmed the same thing. They noted that selectively clearing senescent cells directly reduced the burden of SASP inflammation in patients' tissue and blood after just a short time. The conclusion is crystal clear: when we can get rid of this noisy crowd of zombies, the microenvironment gets cleaned up, and your stem cells will spontaneously reawaken and become productive again. The second mechanism lies deep within the stem cells themselves, involving a component called the lysosome, which can be likened to the cell's waste recycling center. In young healthy cells, this factory constantly collects and breaks down damaged proteins and worn-out mitochondria to salvage reusable materials. But as we age, this recycling center runs into serious trouble. A groundbreaking study recently published in the journal Cell Stem Cell by Dr. Sagi Ghaffari and her team at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai has shed light on this phenomenon. They discovered that in aged hematopoietic stem cells, these lysosomes are not lazy. On the contrary, they become hyperactivated, turning overly acidic and working so furiously that they become exhausted and damaged. The consequence is that instead of neatly processing waste, this factory leaks cellular debris internally, triggering a powerful inflammatory signaling cascade and severely weakening the body's ability to produce blood and immune DO cells. However, the most astonishing finding from the Mount Sinai study was that when they used an inhibitor to cool down and restore the working pace of these recycling centers, even in a lab environment outside the body, the aged stem cells immediately regained their youthful metabolism. Their blood-forming capacity skyrocketed by more than 8 times. Dr. Ghaffari has confirmed a truth that completely changes our paradigm: stem cell aging is not an irreversible one-way street. Although these lysosome inhibitors have not yet been used in humans, this discovery provides the core biological basis for why lifestyle interventions that activate the process of cellular self-cleaning or autophagy, such as the intermittent fasting I'll guide you through later, possess such immense and real restorative power. The third mechanism directly explains the decline in strength, slow recovery, and muscle atrophy or sarcopenia that many people experience as they get older. It involves a core protein called cyclin D1. Think of cyclin D1 as an alarm clock. Your muscle stem cells, scientifically known as satellite cells, normally spend most of their time in a dormant standby mode, waiting for a signal of injury to wake up and start repairs. In young people, this alarm clock is loud and sensitive. But after age 60, the expression of cyclin D1 drops, causing the alarm to become much weaker. The stem cells fall into a state of deep hibernation, so deep that even when a muscle is torn after strenuous activity, they refuse to wake up. But this dormancy is not a permanent sentence, and science has proven it. A landmark study from Stanford University, published by Dr. Jamie Brett and his colleagues in the prestigious journal Nature Metabolism in 2020, revealed how to reverse this mechanism. Through experiments on an aging animal model equivalent to a human between 60 and 70 years old, the research team discovered that maintaining regular voluntary aerobic exercise for 3 weeks completely restored the expression levels of cyclin D1. The alarm clock had been turned back up. Aged muscle stem cells not only awakened but also recovered their ability to regenerate tissue at the exact same rate as young cells. Even when stem cells from older exercising individuals were transplanted into non-exercising ones, this superior regenerative ability was still maintained. This study provides irrefutable mechanistic evidence. Muscle atrophy is not destiny. That's why at this age, muscle-building exercises are not merely for burning calories. They carry specific biological signals that force your stem cells to exit their dormant state and get back to work. The fourth mechanism is myeloid skewing. Imagine your immune system is like an army with 2 main forces: the rapid response infantry, which are the pro-inflammatory myeloid cells, and the adaptive special forces, the lymphoid cells capable of remembering and destroying specific targets. Due to age-related hormonal changes, specifically consistently high levels of IGF-1 and a signaling enzyme called PKA, the hematopoietic stem cell military academy in your bone marrow constantly receives false alarm signals. As a result, it prioritizes the mass production of the inflammatory infantry while completely neglecting the training of the special forces. This explains an extremely common clinical paradox: why the bodies of older adults are always in a state of chronic inflammation, yet their ability to fight new pathogens or produce an antibody response to vaccines is very poor. But once again, modern medicine does not see this as a dead end. This concept was clearly demonstrated in a breakthrough study from Dr. Walter Longo's lab at the University of Southern California, or USC, published in the prestigious journal Cell Stem Cell in 2014. The research team showed that when we intervene to reduce the IGF-1 and PKA signals through cycles of nutrient restriction or experimental fasting, the bone marrow system is immediately reset. When the false alarm is lifted, the hematopoietic stem cells immediately rebalance their production line. They stop pumping out inflammatory cells and start regenerating the force of young lymphoid cells. This mechanistic discovery is the core foundation that explains why the dietary timing interventions I mentioned in the practical protocol are capable of regenerating the immune system at such a profound level. Finally, the fifth mechanism is the thread that ties all of the above together: inflammaging. This isn't the swelling you get when you cut your hand. This is a chronic, smoldering, low-grade inflammation that floods all the tissues and bloodstream in your body. It's like a toxic fog covering an entire city. IL-6 TNF-alpha and a host of other inflammatory molecules remain constantly elevated. This microenvironment is so toxic that even if you were to place a perfectly healthy stem cell into it, it would quickly become stunted and malfunction. All five of these mechanisms do not operate independently but intertwine, creating a vicious cycle that imprisons your vitality. But the good news is, this is not a life sentence. All five of these mechanisms can be intervened with and reversed through specific changes in your daily habits. And in just a moment, I will guide you through each practical pillar in detail to clean up this toxic environment. The first pillar, and the one I want to be most direct about, is exercise. If there is a single pill scientifically proven to awaken stem cells, it is physical activity. We are not talking about exhausting workouts. Medical data clearly indicates two forms you need. The first is moderate intensity cardio, also known as Zone 2 heart rate training. You need to accumulate at least 150 minutes per week, spread out over about 5 days. When you train in this zone, you are directly restoring that cyclin D1 alarm clock, reducing inflammatory cytokines and releasing a flood of regenerative factors into your blood. The second is strength training or resistance training, about 2 to 3 times a week. This is the most direct way to awaken deeply dormant muscle stem cells. However, since we are designing a protocol for the over 60 age group, safety comes first. If you have serious joint problems, osteoporosis, or uncontrolled blood pressure, start very slowly, and you must consult your doctor before lifting weights. The second pillar, nutrition. Here we divide it into two factors: quality and timing. Regarding quality, the Mediterranean diet possesses the strongest clinical evidence for fighting inflammation. Include extra virgin olive oil, fatty fish, rich in omega-3s, cruciferous vegetables, and berries in your daily menu. A critically important point: you need more protein than you think to keep your muscle stem cells active. The target is 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and it must be divided evenly into 25 to 40 grams per meal. Not all crammed into one dinner. At the same time, stay away from refined sugars, ultra-processed foods, alcohol, and processed red meats. They are the fuel poured directly onto the fire of inflammation. Regarding timing, intermittent fasting or restricting your eating to an 8 to 10 hour window each day will activate the mechanism of autophagy, helping the lysosome recycling center clean up cellular waste. But please note this red alert warning: if you are taking diabetes medication, fasting can cause a dangerous drop in blood sugar. Do not under any circumstances attempt this without a doctor's supervision. The third pillar, sleep. This is the factor that is most often underestimated in discussions about longevity. Getting 7 or more hours of sleep per night with a consistent schedule 7 days a week is how you maintain your internal circadian rhythm, the master clock that commands the rest and activity cycles of your stem cells. Keep your bedroom very dark and cool, ideally between 64 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and turn off all electronic screens at least 1 hour before bed. A small biological habit that yields huge results: get outside and expose yourself to natural sunlight for 15 to 20 minutes within the first hour of waking up. This light signal will perfectly reset your biological clock. The fourth pillar, stress management. Many people consider stress to be just an emotion, but science proves it is a process of biological transformation. Chronic stress skyrockets cortisol levels, which in turn ignites the flame of systemic inflammation. Adopting interventions like meditation or diaphragmatic breathing exercises for 10 to 20 minutes a day can create real physiological change, putting the brakes on the inflammatory cascade. Furthermore, studies have delivered a startling finding: chronic loneliness is as biologically toxic as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Maintain social connections and spend time in nature. They are powerful antidotes for your cellular environment. The fifth pillar, targeted supplementation. This is an area where you need to be extremely vigilant to avoid falling into the trap of pseudoscience. We will only focus on substances with a real data-backed foundation. First is vitamin D3. Ensure your blood levels are maintained between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter. You will typically need to supplement with 1,000 to 4,000 IUs per day, and remember to take it with vitamin K2. Second is omega-3 with a dosage of 2 to 4 grams per day, combining EPA and DHA to directly take down inflammatory cytokines. Finally, there's quercetin, a promising compound for clearing out senescent cells. But instead of buying expensive pills that risk interacting with blood thinners or blood pressure medications you may be taking, I recommend prioritizing getting quercetin from natural food sources like red onions, apples, or capers. Now, I want to talk about what you can realistically expect from this protocol, because the most common mistake I see in clinical practice is mismanaged expectations. Many people expect a miracle to happen overnight, and then they quickly abandon a method that is genuinely working simply because they don't see themselves looking 20 years younger in the first 2 weeks. Cellular biology doesn't work like an instant on-off switch. It's more like overhauling and renovating an entire ecosystem, and that takes time. In the first and second weeks, the changes occur primarily at the microscopic level, almost impossible to measure with the naked eye. However, if you strictly adhere to the sleep schedule and anti-inflammatory diet, most people will begin to notice a gentle improvement in their daytime energy and sleep quality. Although these are just subjective feelings biologically, they reflect the first sign that the underlying burden of inflammation is starting to decrease. By the 1-month mark, the results will begin to show up on lab reports. If you get your blood-tested, inflammatory biomarkers like high-sensitivity CRP and IL-6 will often start to trend downward. You may not feel this physically, but deep inside your stem cells are beginning to breathe easier because their surrounding environment has become less toxic. Moving into the second and third months, your persistent efforts will be rewarded with clear and measurable improvements in your physical functions. Your walking speed, your grip strength, and especially the rate at which your muscles recover after a day of physical labor or a workout will improve significantly. This is vivid clinical evidence that the cyclin D1 alarm clock has been reactivated, waking your muscle satellite stem cells from their deep slumber. Continuing into the 3 to 6 month period, most studies record a marked decrease in biomarkers related to senescent cells. The amount of zombie cells has been significantly cleared out by the autophagy system. And when you maintain this protocol for 6 to 12 months, the most miraculous change at a systemic level will occur. Your immune system will begin to show signs of partially reversing its aging. The military academy in your bone marrow will be rebalanced, prioritizing the production of more young, flexible immune cells, ready to deal with new pathogens and threats, while reducing the force of old cells that only create chronic, underlying inflammation. However, this is a reality check, so I must provide you with the medical safety red flags that you cannot ignore. Listening to your body is the ultimate principle. If during exercise you suddenly experience chest tightness or pain, an irregular pounding heartbeat, dizziness, or unusual shortness of breath that doesn't match your exertion level, or while practicing time-restricted eating you feel shaky, break into a cold sweat, or become confused, that could be a sign of hypoglycemia. In any of the situations mentioned above, stop the intervention immediately and seek medical attention. To have the safest and most scientific starting point, I always recommend you ask your doctor to run a basic blood panel before making lifestyle changes. Ask for a complete blood count (CBC) to assess blood cell production, a high-sensitivity C-reactive protein test for inflammation serum 2,5, hydroxyvitamin D levels along with fasting blood glucose and HbA1c. These numbers not only ensure your safety but also serve as an excellent baseline for you to confidently track your own biological recovery over the next 6 to 12 months. And once again, I repeat the disclaimer, always consult your physician before implementing any changes, especially if you have pre-existing conditions such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or kidney failure, or if you are taking daily prescription medications. In short, the core message I want you to take with you today is this: aging is not a death sentence for your stem cells. Your stem cells don't disappear after age 65. They are just frozen by a toxic microenvironment and chronic inflammation. Instead of throwing money away on unproven treatments, you can personally clean up that ecosystem with Zone 2 cardio, an anti-inflammatory diet, sleep optimization, cortisol management, and targeted supplementation of micronutrients. The real control is truly in your hands. If you find these evidence-based medical perspectives genuinely useful for your health journey, please click on the video appearing on your screen right now. It's a deeper analysis I've done on the mechanisms of inflammation in cardiovascular aging, a perfect piece to complement what we've discussed today to protect your circulatory system. And before you go, I have a question for you. Of the 5 pillars of lifestyle intervention we've outlined, which pillar do you plan to commit to first starting tomorrow morning? Let me know in the comments below. 2017 for 1, 2010 6. I always read all of your responses to use as material for future content. Keep seeking knowledge and protecting your health. I'm Dr. Crisanto, and I'll see you in the next video.